the decision. And in business, you've got a lot more decisions than you do or a lot more options. In consumer buying, the decision is to buy or not to buy. That is the question. In business, it's do you buy it or do you make it? Outsourcing versus, and typically in business today, if it's not mission critical, if it's not core to what you're trying to do, the trend is to outsource and focus on what you do best. Do you have one or multiple suppliers? How many suppliers do you have? Do you lease or buy? Take ownership or not? And then what kind of terms? Financing is much more important in business than it is in consumer markets, although financing is important in consumer markets. And the key in business is you always want to do business with other people's money. So get as much credit as you can, slow terms for payment as you can. These are some of the non-financial financial costs or non-price costs that people take into account when they're negotiating a business purchase. And then also delivery. Ideally, you would want delivery on a schedule that's convenient for you, and payment on a schedule that's convenient for you. But again, those are all things that we take into account when we're making the decision. And then the last, get it in writing. And actually, this is for not just for businesses, but for students. Get it in writing. I've had many times where a student will come to me and said, I talked to this person and they said I could do this. And then the person who said that is no longer there. So get it in writing. If you got an agreement to change the grade, then get that in writing, have a copy of it. Sometimes, so ideally it's a contract. Sometimes you can't get a contract. So an alternative to the contract is what they call an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. And it's not so much a contract, but it's just kind of a document that summarizes what the gist of the conversation was. So these are the terms under which we did business. And a variation of the MOU, if you're working with a person, and because we talked about selective perception, selective hypothesis testing, that what was said may not be what you heard. So getting a written confirmation is a good way to make sure that we both understood what was said. And if you can't get both sides to agree to a formal document, another technique would be just to send an email saying, thanks for the conversation. These are the things that we think we agreed to. If I'm incorrect, please let me know. But at least that gives you a written record at the time of the discussion as to what you think was said. And if the other person doesn't respond, then you can assume that you were right. It's not as good as having a two-sided contract, but at least it's a document, a record of the conversation that happened. And then post-purchase evaluation. And we talked about in business, relationships are everything. And it's not just the relationship with your customer. And this is where you get into a little bit of what they call co-opetition. Is in addition to having, so if I'm Ford and I'm buying spark plugs, in addition to having, does Champion still make spark plugs? I think the brand is still there, but I'm not sure that they still make them. But so if I'm Champion spark plugs and I'm selling to Ford, Ford is my customer, right? But also, both me and Ford are trying to sell to the end user. So I've got the relationship between me and the manufacturer, and then we also both need to take into account that we need to keep the relationship with the customer alive as well. So what happens is many times when you have products in B2B markets, it's not just resolving the issue between the two parties, but it's resolving the issue for the end user. And there's a thing going on right now, I don't know if you've heard about this one, where the airbags are exploding. Oh, I guess I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, I forget what the last count is, but there's a Japanese manufacturer of airbags, Takata, where they're having problems with the airbags. They get moisture into them and they explode and have been known to kill people. So all of the automobile manufacturers who have built cars using those airbags are going to their customers and saying, you know, we want to recall, we want to replace the airbags, even though it's not the automobile manufacturer's fault that the bags are defective. The automobile manufacturer is the one that is dealing with the customer, so they need to make sure that the customer's happy, and then go back to Takata and say, how can you make us whole for dealing with the situation? Yes, comment.
I got that letter that my Ford Ranger was, that the airbags were causing, like, as deployed, were causing shrapnel to shoot out at people. But there was nothing that they could do. I was like, hope I don't get in any crash.
So this was not the way to take care of your customers. Got a letter from Ford saying, you know, we have heard that your airbag may explode, filling the cab with shrapnel. We hope that doesn't happen to you. But again, so this is all about Takata made the problem, but your issue is with Ford. So Takata not only needs to deal with Ford, but Takata needs to understand that Ford is dealing with you. And that has, again, it's a little more complex dispute resolution than it is in the consumer market where it's just me and you. Any questions? Or have I been crystal clear as always? Yes, it was for the last 1 minute. I think that's it for today. I'll let you out 10 minutes early. I don't know what's wrong with me. See you again Thursday, and we'll talk about something else.